Few people know Donald Trump better than his son, Eric. Earlier, Vlad and I spoke to him about his father's latest controversy, how he is perceived by the GOP, and what it's like to grow up Trump.
So let me ask you, Eric, just a little while ago, your dad blamed a bad earpiece on why he failed to condemn David Duke and the KKK on CNN yesterday morning. A lot of people are concerned that his response wasn't strong enough, that his response wasn't as vociferous as it needed to be. Your dad clearly knows who the KKK is.
Well, the whole thing's totally ridiculous. I mean, I don't know how many times on Twitter and everywhere else, I mean, he's condemned David Duke no less than 400 times. And you know, I mean, that's the sad thing about politics, and I think I take this personally as a son, right? I mean, I love my father to death. He's an incredible guy, but, you know, here these candidates will come over. He's associated with, you know, some guy comes out of the woodwork. The guy's clearly a horrible guy, right? I don't think anybody can think that David Duke's a good guy. He's condemned him 400 times, and then other candidates will come out, you know, he's endorsed by the KKK. Like, give me a break, you know? I mean, this is actually the worst part of politics, and I think, you know, as a family member kind of looking in from the front row, it's really horrible stuff. It's really horrible stuff. And it's actually good that the American people get to see that this is the way that these guys can conduct themselves.
You talked a bit about Twitter. Can we talk about your dad and social media?
Sure.
We know that he is a Twitter addict. He's always on there. But, you know, he certainly has been criticized, not only for the things that he's tweeted out, but some of the things that he retweets. Yeah. Some of the associations, some people with questionable associations to white supremacists. Most recently, I think it was Mussolini, fascist dictator. What is the strategy there? He's certainly been called on it, and he doesn't seem to back down or change.
My father's an amazing guy, right? He doesn't have a bad bone in his body. He's one of the most charitable people you've ever met. He's on Twitter, and quite frankly, the fact that he doesn't have a team of 97 people like Hillary has, right, in his camp, writing his little tweets out and making sure every word is passed by, you know, legal compliance and this, I mean, that's what makes him the larger-than-life character. I mean, he's actually relating to, you know, the people. I mean, people will tweet stuff, he'll retweet stuff, and, you know, I mean, that's what makes the guy amazing, and he's doing this himself, and, you know, that's what makes his personality. I mean, people love that about him. I mean, she's not necessarily PC, and listen, I'm sure there have been mistakes that have been made where somebody hides something in their profile or something, and you see a funny tweet and you retweet it. I mean, quite frankly, we've all done that, right? But that's what makes Donald Trump larger than life, the fact that he's actually the one doing the communicating, not a team of random people in the background.
Eric, let me ask you, Marco Rubio has called your father a con man. There's others who have said that a Trump presidency would be lunacy. As a son, when you hear some of the things that are said about your father from either the other candidates running or from the establishment Republicans who are, it looks like right now, running scared at the possibility of a Trump presidency, how does it hit you just as a son?
Yeah, you know, it's kind of funny. We have a couple friends who have had kids that, you know, have gone through the same process, not necessarily president, but, you know, governors, et cetera. And they always said, listen, it's actually worse being the kids because, you know, you want to defend, but you're not always on the front line to be able to defend. And listen, we have very thick skin. You know, my father's my best friend. He's an amazing guy. You know, everything he's ever touched has turned to gold. You know, he's fantastic. And listen, when I see Rubio and Cruz out there, first of all, that message is coming from special interest, right? It's not them. You know, 3 weeks ago, we are so nice, we're only going to take the high road in this, and then all of a sudden they turn into total animals, right? And, you know, so that's a little bit sad to see. But, you know, I always say the most dangerous person is the person who's drowning. And, you know, these two have very, you know, small road ahead of them. I mean, you know, we're doing so well. Tomorrow, it looks like based on the polls, so we're going to do incredibly well. I'm superstitious, so I won't say, but, you know, knock on wood. And, you know, these guys are grasping at straws at this point. I mean, they're trying to pull him under. They're trying to bring them down with them. And it's sad to see, but, you know, my father's an amazing guy. I think he's going to win this. I said it 3 months ago that I thought he was going to win it, and I'm proud of him.
What about the criticism that your dad, though, for example, has been misogynist towards women? He said some things that, you know, a lot of people take umbrage at. He said some very negative things about Mexicans.
Well, is it interesting that we won, if you look at Nevada, we won the women's vote leaps and bounds. We also won the Hispanic vote leaps and bounds. These are sound bites that these people come up with that have zero basis. We hire more Hispanics as a company than anybody. We have more female executives in the Trump organization than anybody. So it's really great little sound bites that other people can throw out. But, you know, yet, you know, the other candidates sitting on the stage with him, they've never actually hired anybody. They've never had to make payroll. They've never supported people's family.
So to Anne-Marie's point, though, is he just shooting from the hip when he says those things that come off as cringeworthy or even in some cases misogynist, or even, as some people have said, perhaps racist when it comes to banning Muslims from entering the country? Does that feel for you as...
And isn't that reckless if he is shooting from
or spun, right? I mean, his point about Muslims was actually a very simple one. Let's hold, and it was at the time of the Syrian refugees, as you'll remember, where they were about to let 200,000 refugees. We don't know who the people were, and our intelligence agencies were telling us that ISIS is among them. Make no mistake, we have evidence that ISIS is among them. He goes, I am calling for a temporary ban, temporary keyword, ban of Muslims entering this country, including the Syrian refugees, until our government can get their act together and figure out what's going on. There's nothing wrong with that message. We've got to know who's coming into this country. In fact, it's actually very consistent with the message that he's delivered the entire time.
So let me ask you this, though, because some people will argue that it may be at the expense of the Republican Party. I've people who watch these things, who have advised the Republican Party. I've heard all sorts of things. This is a fight for the heart and soul of the party. The party is being torn apart. Is this something that he's concerned about?
What has the Republican Party gotten Republicans in the last 15 years? Hey, we've lost the last 2 elections that we fought in. Right? I mean, what has the Republican Party gotten? You know what? The one thing, my father's bringing people out to the polls. He's getting people excited about it, right? I mean, you see the numbers. The numbers don't lie. Right, we've had 12 debates. We've had 30 million people watching every single one of those debates.
But
if you went 4 years ago, right, there was no one watching these. People are finally engaged in politics. My father's done an amazing service for this country. He's done an amazing service for the party. What the party doesn't like is they can't control him because he's not taking their money.
Eric, at those debates, though, he's been pressed on delivering some specifics when it comes to building that wall. He says he wants to trim the federal budget, but even when pressed specifically on what agencies he would cut, he names a couple, but that still leaves millions and millions and millions of dollars in the budget. Why hasn't he provided any specifics?
Listen, my father's built one of the great companies of the world, right? I mean, he's built, you see them every day. We're here in New York. How many times a day do you pass by a Trump building that he built with his own 2 hands?
But you're basically saying what he's saying, which is just trust me, I know what I'm doing. I'm a big businessman.
I'm saying the man is a man of absolute action. Believe me, he will build that wall. Just believe me, he will build that wall. He will build it so fast people's heads will spin. And by the way, he will make Mexico pay for it. I mean, I'm telling you, that's the man he is, and I've seen him. I've seen him do some of the greatest deals in the world, and you know, he's phenomenal.
But still, the question remains. I mean, when he's asked about some specifics, when he talks about repealing Obamacare, and he says, "I'll replace it with something that will be better," and people say, "Well, what will that be?" He hasn't provided that.
And 4 times he talks about free market, right? How he believes in competitions. I mean, right now, effectively, you know, you have monopolies out there. I mean, you have monopolies out there. You have one option. We do this all the time as a company. Remember, none of these other candidates have ever do it. We bid out health insurance all the time as a company. And you'll go and, you know, you'll be in X, Y, and Z state, and you'll have one bid come out because no one else is allowed to compete there. He's saying, let's bring more of a free market system in there. You know, let's allow, you know, different companies to compete.
But
when that happens, rates will go down. I mean, it's actually a very simple process.
So he talks about the free market, but then he also says that he wants to impose a 30% tariff on goods coming from China. That's not really the free market.
No. He says a different thing. He says that when a U.S. company like Carrier, right, that makes air conditioners, or Ford, or Nabisco, they take a U.S. operation and they move it 3 feet across the southern border, and then they take that product at the behest of thousands and thousands of workers, and then they take that product and they ship it across the wall, right? And they sell it to us at the exact same price as they were before. And now you have, you know, thousands of men, women, and children and families, right, who, you know, can't afford to go to school, can't afford to go to college, right? Can't afford to support their family, right? Yes, you should tax those people because they should stay. Those companies should stay in this country. And you know, our leaders do nothing about it. And it's a reason we have 100 million people out of the workforce in this country, right? They talk about 5% unemployment. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. I mean, all our jobs are going overseas. In fact, you know, as I've been on the campaign trail, I've gone around to so many different states, whether it be Iowa, whether you drive through some of these towns, they're ghost towns. There's no lights on. There's no cars there. You have these massive buildings. There's nothing there where you used to have manufacturing in this country that's now all in China and Mexico and so many other places. It's sad when you see $550 billion trade deficit with some of these countries. That's at the behest of the American people, and he's the only person talking about that. It's really, really sad.
Can your father take advice?
He actually does a great job taking.
Really?
He does, you know, but he's also his own man, right? I mean, Anne-Marie, he's his own man, right?
Have you ever disagreed with him? Have you ever said, "Dad, I don't think we should do this," and he says, "Eric, you're right"?
Have you ever disagreed with your family? Or I mean, of course you do once in a while, but. You know, he's a man who will ask everybody, and it's not just executives, down to, you know, the driver and us. What do you think about this? What do you think of that? You know, and then he formulates his own decision.
Is he a compromiser? Will he compromise with people? In other words, the criticism that a lot of people have of some establishment Republicans, Tea Party Republicans, is that they've been unwilling to compromise on some specific deals.
And by the way, and he's been so critical of it.
I think when you characterize him as a man who, he said he's financing this campaign, so, the Republican Party is angry because they can't control him. I think also part of that message is he's a guy that can't be controlled. He's a guy that doesn't listen to advice.
No, the
he's
Republican Party shouldn't be able to control
but
somebody.
Not just the Republican Party. I mean, that's why I asked you, can he take advice? Can he step back and let other people
look at how much he's accomplished in his life? Look at how much he's accomplished in his life. Do you think you're able to accomplish that with? In fact, I think it's one of his greatest criticisms of Cruz. Hey, you've got to be able to sit people down. In fact, it's one of his great criticisms of Obama and his executive orders. You can't just sign executive orders. That's not how this system works. It's supposed to go to Congress, and people are supposed to talk about it, and they're supposed to come up with a great compromise and something that works very well for this nation, and then you implement that into law. That's how the system was designed to work by our forefathers, and he's had to do that his entire life. You don't build 90-story structures in the middle of New York City without some kind of compromise, without bringing everybody together, whether it be government, whether it be the local community boards, whether it be the builders and the this and the architects and everybody else to build something. You have to be a person who gets along.
Eric, I'm curious. You've watched your father be successful in business, be successful in television, but politics is a completely different game. Have you seen him learn or change or evolve during this journey?
Oh, I think it's a great question. Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. He's been a politician for 7 months. For the last 11 years, I've gone all over the world with him. Right, we've sat across a desk like this, building projects together, and there's no question. We're all green to politics. I'm green to politics. In fact, I'm not a politician, right? But we're all green to this process. So I think
has it changed him in any way? I know
there's no question. It's been an unbelievable learning experience, right? It's been unbelievable. But I think it has taught him and has taught all of us. I mean, what's wrong with the system? And I think, quite frankly, in so many elections thus far, it's always been the establishment who's kind of, picked the, they've gone around the table, it's this good old boys club, and they kind of pick, the person that they want. It's really the first time that the American people are speaking. They're seeing it. They're seeing the nonsense. I mean, they're seeing what's happening behind the scenes. When you see these debates, right, where somebody will sneeze, one of the other candidates will sneeze, the entire audience will get up and start clapping. Then you'll say something that's really intelligent, and everybody, no one says anything, or quite frankly, they boo. I mean, that's not indicative of the American people. It's not indicative of the American people. And, I think the voters are speaking now, and he's doing great, and I'm proud of him.
Eric, before you go, what was it like growing up Trump?
Yeah. We know it honestly, my mother and my father, but mainly speaking about my father right now, just because this topic at hand. But I mean, he's an incredible guy. He's my best friend in the world. I love him to death. I'm not running around, being by his side in every single stop, because I have any aspirations to go into politics. I'm doing it because I love the man. I mean, from a fatherly perspective, he's been amazing. From a career perspective, from a mentorship perspective, he's amazing. And I'll never forget going to school, right? I mean, just one little example of him as a human being. Going to school, I'd be 6 years old. I'd go give him a kiss goodbye. Bye, Dad, I'm going to school. Eric, no drinking, no drugs, no smoking. I was 6 years old. I didn't know what drinking, drugs, or smoking was.
That's great.
No drinking, no drugs, no smoking. And by the way, I
can actually see him just saying that to you, Eric. No drinking.
And by the way, you better do well in school. And that's the man he was. And he literally hit that message every single day. I mean, this is a guy who's never had a sip of alcohol in his life. I mean, his straight edge. He hit that message to us every day. And he was an amazing father. He made us work. He made us work very, very, very hard. We were on construction sites at 11 years old with, sledgehammers. And we were never the family that was going to dance on a, clear plastic table at a nightclub at 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, we would have been hung. And nor did we have any desire to. And that was because of his parenting. He's an amazing guy. I love him to death. He's my best friend in the world. And I'm proud of what he's accomplished. I mean, I'm really, really proud of what he's accomplished.
Eric Trump, thank you so much for stopping by, man. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.